of people are dead in Iran and in Lebanon, hundreds more in the surrounding countries. At least 18 Americans are dead. Nearly 500 Americans are injured, likely many more, but we don't actually know because the Pentagon will not tell us. And a commander-in-chief with seemingly little interest in actually ending any of this madness. Senator Tim Kaine is a Democrat of Virginia. He sits on the Armed Services Committee, and he joins me now. Senator, it's good to see you. Thank you for being here.
You bet, Jacob. I'm glad to be with you.
Senator, what do you make of the tone that the president uses when talking about our fallen soldiers? The all caps in social media today particularly got me.
The president is very confused and kind of careening all over the deck on this, as he has been from the very beginning. This is a war that is illegal, and it was a war that was foolish and unnecessary from the start. What I thought about during this ceremony as the remains of these brave soldiers are coming home is what the parents of these soldiers or the spouses or the kids or the brothers and sisters want to know is why. Why was this necessary? And the president has never been able to answer that question. If you're going to send our best and brightest into a war, you better be able to answer the question why. And he's never been able to do that. No plan, no rationale, no allied support, no consultation with Congress, hence deeply unpopular with the American public. And 5 months into a war that he thought would probably last as long as his own attention span, he still can't look these parents in the face and answer the question why.
It's the same question, Senator, that the father and mother, the military father and mother I met from Buffalo today, asked down in the financial district of New York, and the woman that Alex Tabbitt spoke with when he was out today. And the tone, I think, is what is so bedeviling. And the president uses the same tone that he used on social media when speaking about these war crimes, potential war crimes. He's threatening again to target civilian infrastructure. What is your response to that?
Well, first, the United States has already destroyed civilian infrastructure. Water treatment plants, the destruction of a school that caused the death of probably more than 175 students. The Pentagon has said they're doing a study of why they hit a school, and we know the study's done, but they haven't yet released us to us. I think I know why they don't want the public to see it. Threatening civilian infrastructure, it's a war crime. It's a war crime. And again, you add to the illegality of the war because, A, the president didn't come to Congress as the Constitution said. B, he's ignored the War Powers Resolution by prosecuting the war past 60 days. And C, both houses of Congress under Republican majority voted that the war was illegal and he had to stop it unless he got an authorization, and he's ignoring the law. So that is why this war is so deeply unpopular, and why, you know, in Virginia, a very pro-military state, I just left an event where a Marine who said, I'm a real conservative guy, I voted for you once, but generally I haven't voted for you. Thanks for doing what you can to stop this foolish war.
Yeah. And those same Republicans you're talking about, it sounds like they now want to sneak more funding for the war into the reconciliation bill. Do you think that they have the votes, even along party lines at this point?
It's interesting. So the House barely got a bill done to, push more money into the Pentagon. The president is asking for a 40% increase in the Pentagon's budget over last year with no guardrails in the middle of an illegal war, and coming to us and asking for an additional $67 billion to fund a war that is illegal and that's deeply unpopular with the American public. What Congress needs to do is be the Article I branch and do everything we can to bring an end to this war.
I mean, the reporting is very clear that we're running out of interceptor missiles, and that's part of the problem here with these casualties that we're seeing and the injuries that are being now finally disclosed to the American people, and the war just keeps dragging on. Is a standalone defense spending bill something that you would support?
Well, when the Pentagon says they're running out of money, they neglect to tell you something, that the reconciliation bill that passed last year that gave $153 billion extra dollars to the Pentagon, $89 billion of that has not yet been obligated. And now they're coming and saying, we got to get another $67 billion because of this war in Iran and to replenish our munitions, which never should have been drawn down in the first place if they hadn't foolishly declared war. What about the $89 billion you have sitting over there that we gave you last year that you haven't even spent? So I think this math doesn't add up, and particularly when they're not willing to accept any guardrails on how the money is being used. So, no, I don't think in the middle of an illegal war that's deeply unpopular with Americans that President Trump never should have started, I don't think that's the right time to just inflate the Pentagon budget dramatically.
I don't, I mean, and you have such a better vantage point, obviously, than I do to all of this, but it's hard to see from where I sit how both sides make their way back to the negotiating table as things stand. Even Fox News, some hosts are calling this now another forever war. Is that what we're looking at?
Well, look, 5 months into something, I know the president thought it was going to be done in a couple of days because his advisors told him Iran will close the straits. And he said, no, don't worry about it. The war's going to be over already, which anybody with any sense would have known was wrong. There is a path to getting back to the table. It is a ceasefire. It is reopening the straits. It's allowing Iran access to ports. It is some investment by partners in the region to help rebuild what has been destroyed in Iraq. And that could build some tighter relationships in the region that could be positive. And then it is a discussion along the lines of what the president was discussing with Iran about here's what we need to do to put limits on the nuclear program. And Iran is not going to just accept those voluntarily. They'll want to trade. And you know what it'll end up looking like if you get a deal? It'll end up looking a lot like the deal that the United States negotiated with Iran in 2015 that Donald Trump foolishly tore up. And we told Trump,
yeah, exactly.
If you make diplomacy impossible, you are making war inevitable. We told him that. His own Secretary of State and Defense told him not to tear up the diplomatic deal. The only reason we're at war today and our troops are dying is that Donald Trump tore up a diplomatic deal that was working.
Well, help me understand, what is up with this deal with Saudi Arabia? Are you concerned about the potential for nuclear proliferation in the region with this Saudi Arabia deal that we're hearing about now?
Yes. Civilian nuclear power nations should be able to use it as they see fit. But the sort of gold standard for the U.S. in transferring technology has been to ask for two things. One, don't do your own enrichment of uranium or reprocessing of plutonium. We can provide that to you. But if you do your own enrichment and reprocessing, it can be used to proliferate nuclear weapons or inspire others to do the same. That's goal one. Goal two is, if you're going to have a nuclear program, allow the International Atomic Energy Agency to do inspections that meet something called the Additional Protocol, which is designed to ensure that nobody cheats. This deal allows the possibility of the Saudis to enrich and reprocess, and the Saudis have also not agreed to allow the nuclear inspections that are necessary to make sure nobody cheats. When somebody says, I won't agree to the inspections that guarantee my program is peaceful, the red flags start going up by the dozen. So I'm very, very worried about this deal not containing those two elements to protect against proliferation.
Senator Tim Kaine, Virginia, I'm very grateful that you joined us tonight. I appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Glad to be with you. Thanks.
Thanks. Coming up, why is the MAGA echo chamber using, can't even believe I'm going to say this, rigatoni to try and rig American democracy? I'm serious. That's coming up next.
I demand a lot of my body. I'm a singer. I'm a dancer.